Can you fix our door? Mommy's scared. She can't sleep at night. The 4-year-old girl looked up at the stranger, her voice crystal clear, cutting through the quiet Brooklyn street on that cold winter morning. 2 bodyguards in black suits standing beside their boss reached inside their jackets, but the man raised his hand, signaling them to stop. Elena froze where she stood, her breath catching in her throat as if each of her daughter's words had struck her square in the chest. She rushed forward and scooped Lily up, her face turning pale. I'm sorry. She doesn't know any better. Please don't. Please just forget it. She lowered her head, heart pounding wildly. She had heard enough rumors about the man at the end of the street, the Mafia boss who made all of East Brooklyn tremble in fear. They said he killed without hesitation. They said never look him in the eyes. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked away faster than necessary, almost running. Lily looked back over her mother's shoulder, her round eyes confused, not understanding why that moment felt so heavy. The black Rottweiler lying at the man's feet whined softly, as if wanting to follow. Dominic Rossi remained standing by the iron gate. He made no promises. He didn't call after them. Marco, his right-hand man, muttered, "Just some neighbors, boss. Forget about it." But Dominic didn't hear him. The little girl's voice kept echoing in his mind, louder than the wind howling through the street. Mommy's scared. She can't sleep at night. That night, the blizzard hit Brooklyn. Wind howled across the old rooftops. Snow lashed against windows like scattered sand, turning everything white. The temperature dropped below 10 degrees. Dominic sat in his study, inside 4 solid walls without a single creak, the heating system humming steadily, warm silence wrapping around him. A glass of whiskey sat before him, but he didn't drink. He just stared out into the darkness. Through the blur of snow, he could see house number 47, where that woman and her daughter lived. The light inside flickered as if about to die. And the door, it was shaking, not quite open, not quite closed, as if caught between holding on and surrendering to the storm. Dominic set the glass down. A moment of silence, then the memories came flooding back. A rundown apartment in the South Bronx 25 years ago. A thin, frail mother sitting by the door all night long. An 11-year-old boy lying in bed pretending to sleep, but his eyes never dared to close. A door with no lock, wind creeping through every crack, and a fear colder than winter itself. Can you fix our door? The little girl's voice rang out, blending with his own voice from years ago, the child who once wished someone would come fix his family's door. Dominic stood up. Marco looked up from the sofa. Boss, where are you going in this storm? No answer. Dominic grabbed his leather coat and picked up an old, worn toolbox, the only thing left from his late mother. He paused for a moment at the door. Shadow, his loyal Rottweiler, rose to his feet, ready to follow. Marco's jaw dropped. You've lost your mind. You're the boss of all East Brooklyn, and you're going to fix someone's door in the middle of the night? Dominic pushed the door open. The icy wind and snow slapped against his face, because no one ever did that for my mother. Then he stepped into the night, Shadow trudging silently behind him, 2 figures slowly disappearing into the white storm, heading toward the house with the broken door, heading toward the woman huddled in the corner with her child, shivering from the cold, awake from fear, heading toward a 4-year-old's question, a question that had awakened something Dominic Rossi thought he had buried long ago, the heart of a child who was never protected. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button to keep us going. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that sometimes people aren't scared because they're weak. They're scared because they've been strong alone for too long. And if you want more healing stories like this one, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment. Inside the house, at number 47, Elena sat curled up in the corner of the living room, her back pressed against a wall that felt like ice. Lily was folded in her lap, wrapped tight in every blanket they owned. The heating system had stopped working at the beginning of the week, and tonight the cold pierced through every thin layer of fabric like needles. The front door shook violently under the howl of the wind. The rope Elena had used to tie the doorknob to a hook on the wall was stretched so tight it was about to snap. Each time the wind slammed into the house, the door sprang open by a few inches, a gap just wide enough for a blade of freezing air to spill in, like invisible fingers squeezing the breath out of their small room. Elena pulled Lily closer, trying to pass a little warmth from her own gaunt body into her daughter's. She had not slept much these past nights, not because of the cold, because of fear. Fear the door would burst open, fear someone would come in, fear she would not be strong enough to protect the only child she had. Lily stirred, her eyes opening in the dark, her voice trembling with cold. "Mama, someone is banging on our door." Elena smoothed her daughter's hair, forcing calm into her voice even as her heart hammered. "There is no one, sweetheart. It is only the wind. Sleep. Mama is here." But in that instant, a knock sounded. Not the wind, not a branch scraping against wood. A knock made by a hand. Slow, patient. 3 steady knocks, measured in the middle of the screaming storm. Elena froze. The blood in her veins seemed to turn to ice. She lowered Lily onto the blankets and motioned for her to stay still, then stood. Her feet moved toward the door as if she were walking on thin ice. Her heart beat so hard she could hear it in her ears. Through the small window above the door, she looked out. The snowstorm churned white and blind, but she still recognized the shape. Tall, motionless, like a statue carved into the storm. Beside him stood the outline of a large dog, black fur stark against the snow. Dominic Rossi, the Mafia boss everyone in East Brooklyn feared. The man she had begged for forgiveness that morning because of Lily's innocent words. He was standing at her door. In the middle of the night, in the middle of a blizzard. Elena swallowed hard, her hand clamped around the doorknob until her knuckles bleached white. She did not know what to do. "Open the door. Do not open it. This man could kill her and no one would ever know. This man could do anything he wanted." Then she heard his voice through the trembling door, low and strangely calm. "I came to check the door. If it is not convenient, I will come back later." No threat, no command, just a simple sentence. As if a Mafia boss standing in a blizzard at midnight to fix a stranger's door was the most ordinary thing in the world. Elena hesitated, and then the wind hit like a fist. The rope snapped. The door flew open. Cold poured in like a starving animal. Lily screamed. Elena spun to grab her, but before she could even react, a shadow moved forward, both hands catching the door, forcing it back into place. Dominic stood there, snow whitening the shoulders of his leather coat, his breath turning to thin smoke in the bitter air. Shadow stayed just behind him, dark eyes watching everything. But the dog did not step inside. Dominic did not cross the threshold. He stayed on the porch, holding the door with one hand, an old toolbox in the other. His gaze swept the frozen room, the thin blankets, the trembling child in the corner, and then settled on Elena. "Will you allow me to fix it?" His voice was not quite a request, but it was not an order either. It lived somewhere between the two, as if he were giving her the right to refuse, even though they both knew she did not have a choice. Elena looked at her daughter shivering uncontrollably, looked at the door groaning in the hands of a stranger. Then she nodded. She could not find a single word, but that nod was enough. Dominic began to work. Dominic knelt beside the door and set his old toolbox down on the porch, already blanketed in snow. He did not rush. Each movement was slow, exact, as if he had done this work 1,000 times before. The beam from the small flashlight Elena held with trembling hands fell across a rusted hinge, and in that weak circle of light, she saw for the first time the hands of the man all of Brooklyn feared. They were not the hands of a kingpin, not the smooth, carefully kept hands of men who sit at the top of power. They were rough, calloused hands, with a few small scars running across the knuckles, the hands of someone who had worked, someone who had endured. Dominic removed the top hinge and checked the rotting wood beneath the frame. He said nothing. Elena said nothing. There was only the wind howling outside, the soft click of metal against metal, and the breath of both of them turning into thin smoke in the freezing air. Lily slipped out from her blankets and padded toward the door on tiny feet. Elena started to stop her, but the child halted a few steps away, wide eyes fixed on the black dog lying still on the porch. "Your dog is so big." Lily's voice rang clear through the stormy night. Dominic paused for a moment, glanced at the little girl, then looked at the dog. "His name is Shadow. He will not bite." Lily sat down right at the threshold, unafraid, and reached out her small hand to stroke the black fur of the Rottweiler. Shadow, the fierce dog even Dominic's own men did not dare approach, lay perfectly still, tail giving a faint wag, letting a 4-year-old touch his head as if he were the gentlest puppy in the world. Elena watched the scene and did not know how to respond. She had heard too many stories about Dominic Rossi, about people who vanished without a trace after angering him, about nights when gunshots echoed at the docks, about eyes cold as ice, eyes that never knew mercy. But the man kneeling here, fixing her door in the middle of a blizzard, the man whose dangerous dog allowed a strange child to pet him, looked as if he belonged to a world entirely different from rumor. Dominic worked a while longer, replacing screws, adjusting the hinge, reinforcing the doorframe with small pieces of wood he had brought in the toolbox. When he stood to check the upper edge of the door, a hard gust cut through, snow slapping Elena's face and making her shiver. She was trying to keep the flashlight steady, but her hands had been numb for a long time. Dominic glanced at her once. Then, without a word, he shrugged off the leather coat he was wearing, rolled it up, and stuffed it into the widest gap between the door and the frame, where the wind was still forcing its way in. Elena opened her mouth to speak. "Your coat. A coat can be replaced." Dominic cut her off, his voice flat. "She cannot." He tipped his head slightly toward Lily, who was still sitting there playing with shadow, completely forgetting the cold around her. Elena fell silent. She did not know how to answer a sentence like that. It was too simple, too direct, too unexpected for her to process in this long, chaotic night. Dominic went back to work, and nearly an hour later he stepped back and looked the door over. He pushed it gently. It closed smoothly. No more creaking, no more gap for the wind to slip through. He opened it, then closed it again. Perfect. Elena came forward, laid her hand on the doorknob, and pressed to test it. For the first time in months, the door shut like a real door. She turned to Dominic, her eyes wet, whether from snow or something else, she could not tell. "Thank you. I do not know how to." "You do not need to." Dominic shook his head as he bent to gather his tools. Then he pulled a small card from his pocket. No name, no title, only a string of phone numbers written by hand. He set it on the edge of the shoe shelf beside the door. "If anything happens, call this number." Elena did not have time to say another word before Dominic gave a soft whistle for Shadow. The dog rose, and Lily waved goodbye as if she were parting from an old friend. And then the two silhouettes walked into the white blur of snow and vanished into the winter night, leaving behind a door sealed tight, a child smiling, and a mother rooted at the threshold, her fingers clenched around an unnamed card, her heart beating in a rhythm she could not name. The first sunlight after the storm slipped through the gap in the old curtains and woke Elena from the deepest sleep she had managed in months. She lay still for a moment, eyes closed, trying to remember the last time she had slept without jolting awake in the night. Then she noticed something else. There was no draft, no rattling door. The room was still cold, but it was not the skin-cutting cold of the nights before. Elena opened her eyes and looked toward the door. It stood shut and steady, as if it had never been on the verge of bursting open in the storm. The leather coat was still wedged into the gap near the top, dark brown against weathered wood. She got up, walked to the door, and laid her hand on the soft leather. It still carried the faint scent of sandalwood and tobacco, the scent of the man from last night. She stood there for a long time, her fingers tracing the stitching, wondering if what happened was real, or only a strange dream. Lily was still asleep, curled in her blanket like a kitten, her lips slightly upturned as if she were dreaming of something sweet. Maybe she was dreaming about Shadow, the big dog she had petted as if he belonged to her. Elena watched her child, and a strange feeling rose in her chest, half relief, half unease. She was not used to being helped. She was even less used to owing a debt to a stranger, especially a man like Dominic Rossi. A few hundred meters away, in the mansion at the end of the street, a completely different world was moving. Dominic sat in his study. Morning sunlight poured through a broad window and fell across an oak desk where thick files waited to be handled. Marco stood across from him, phone in hand, his low voice reporting the night's deals, the shipment at the port, the man who dared to encroach on territory in the south. Dominic listened, but not truly. His eyes stayed on the window, on the small houses across the street. From here he could see the roof of number 47, snow piled thick, but unable to hide the broken patches of tile. "Boss, are you hearing me?" Marco's voice pulled him back. Dominic turned and nodded. "Continue." Marco went on, but his eyes kept flicking to Dominic with concern. He had followed Dominic for more than 10 years. He had seen his boss in the tightest negotiations, in the bloodiest nights, in moments where life and death were decided. But he had never seen Dominic the way he was last night, carrying a toolbox into a blizzard to fix a stranger's door. "Boss," Marco said hesitantly when he finished. "Last night, may I ask?" "No." Dominic cut him off, not cold, but final. Marco was wise enough not to press. He bowed his head and left. But before he closed the door, he caught a glimpse of Dominic turning back to the window, back toward the house at number 47. Alone in the room, Dominic opened the desk drawer and took out an old photograph, yellowed with time. In it, A thin woman with black hair held a sad smile that still tried to be brave. She was holding a boy of about 10. The boy had the same eyes as the man sitting here now. Maria Rossi, his mother, the one who raised him alone in a shabby apartment in the South Bronx. The one who sat up guarding the door each night so he could sleep. The one who worked herself down to the bone so he could eat and have clothes on his back. The one he lost when he was 16, worn out by poverty and illness, before he was strong enough to protect her. Do not become someone you have to fear, Dominic. Her voice drifted through his memory, soft as breath. Dominic stared at the photograph for a long time, then slid it back into the drawer. He had become the man the whole city feared. He had built an empire on violence and power. He had done everything he believed was necessary so he would never be helpless again, never the boy he once was. But last night, when he stood before the broken door of number 47, when he saw that woman holding her child in the corner of a freezing room, he had seen his mother, and he had seen himself, the boy who once wished someone would knock on the door and say everything would be all right. Dominic turned back to the window. He did not know what he was searching for. Maybe only the light in that small house across the street. Maybe only proof that the door he fixed last night was still standing strong. Or maybe, deep inside, he was searching for something he had lost a long time ago. A reason to become the kind of man his mother would not be ashamed of. In the days after the stormy night, Lily would not stop talking about the man who had fixed their door. She called him the Shadow Man, because in the soft, unfinished memory of a 4-year-old, the image of that huge, gentle black dog stayed clearer than the face of the dog's owner. Every morning, while Elena prepared the little breakfast she could manage for the two of them, Lily would ask when the Shadow Man was coming back, when she could play with Shadow again, whether the dog remembered her. Elena did not know how to answer. She only gave a thin, uneasy smile and said he was very busy, that grown-ups had many things to do. But Lily would not forget. One afternoon, when Elena came home from work, she found Lily sitting on the floor with scraps of colored paper spread around her, and the old box of crayons she had been using since preschool. The child was drawing, eyes narrowed in fierce concentration, her tongue poking slightly from the corner of her mouth the way it always did when she focused. Elena sat down beside her and looked at the page. It was a small house, with a brown door shut tight, and a bright yellow light glowing above the porch. Next to the house was a tall man, drawn in sweet, clumsy lines, and a black dog so big it took up nearly half the house. "What are you drawing, Lily?" Elena asked, even though she already knew. "I am drawing the Shadow Man and Shadow." Lily looked up, eyes shining. "I want to give it to him. He fixed our door." "Mama." Elena fell silent. She looked at the picture, looked at her daughter, and felt something tighten in her throat. She did not want to be tied to Dominic Rossi. She did not want to owe a debt to a Mafia boss. She did not want Lily growing attached to someone dangerous like that. But when she looked into her daughter's clear, trusting eyes, she could not bring herself to refuse. "All right," Elena sighed. "We will go give it to him." That afternoon, the two of them walked to the end of the street, where the iron gate of Dominic's mansion rose like a wall separating two worlds. Elena stopped a few steps away, her heart beating out of control. She did not know what she was doing here. She did not know whether to press the bell or turn around and run. But Lily had already darted forward, the rolled-up drawing clutched in her tiny hand. She stood before the gate, looked up at the security camera, and waved. "Shadow Man, I have a present for you." Elena nearly fainted. She rushed forward to scoop her child up, but it was too late. The iron gate began to open, slowly, not because a guard stepped out, but automatically, as if someone inside had seen them and decided to allow it. Elena grabbed Lily's hand, and they stepped into a garden trimmed and perfect, and at the end of the stone path, Dominic was standing there. He wore a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, his face as hard as ever. But when he saw Lily, something in his eyes softened, so slightly it was almost impossible to notice. Shadow came from behind him and bounded toward Lily, as if greeting an old friend. Lily giggled and threw her arms around the dog's neck, the dog twice her size, completely unafraid. Dominic walked closer and stopped a few steps from Elena and Lily. "Is something wrong?" he asked. His voice was low, not cold, but not warm either. Elena opened her mouth to answer, but Lily was faster. She let go of Shadow, ran up to Dominic, looked up at him with eyes that held not even a trace of fear, and held out the rolled-up picture. "I drew it for you. It has you and Shadow. Do you like it?" Dominic did not react right away. He stood motionless, staring at the drawing in the child's hands. Then, slowly, he lowered himself. one knee to the ground, until he was level with Lily. He took the paper, unrolled it, and looked. A small house, a door shut tight, a warm yellow light, a tall man, a black dog, all of it drawn in clumsy lines, colors bleeding, proportions completely wrong, and yet it was the most beautiful picture Dominic had ever seen in his life. He was silent for a long time, long enough that Elena began to worry, to wonder if she had made a terrible mistake. Then Dominic lifted his gaze to Lily and spoke, so softly it was almost a whisper. "This is the best gift I have ever received." Lily beamed, turning to her mother with the triumphant look that said, "I told you so." Elena stood there, not knowing what to say. She watched Dominic rise, the picture still in his hand, and for the first time, she saw something different in his eyes. Not coldness, not danger, but a sadness that was very deep, very old, like a wound that had healed and still left a scar behind. "Thank you, both of you," Dominic said, his voice returning to normal. "Be careful on your way home." He did not invite them in. He did not ask anything more. He only stood there and watched as the mother and child turned and walked away, the drawing still held tight in his hand. And that night, when Marco walked into the study to deliver his report, he stopped short in shock at something he had never seen in this cold mansion. On the refrigerator door in the kitchen, the messy drawing of a 4-year-old child had been taped up, careful and straight, like a priceless treasure. It was the only thing in Dominic Rossi's home that had nothing to do with business, nothing to do with power, nothing to do with violence. It was only a drawing, a small house, a door shut tight, and a warm yellow light Dominic had been searching for 25 years. After the afternoon they delivered the drawing, Elena began to feel uneasy, not because Dominic had done something frightening, but because he had done nothing at all. He was too normal, too gentle, too far from the notorious East Brooklyn boss she had heard about, and that scared her more than any rumor. She was afraid she would start to trust. She was afraid Lily would grow attached. She was afraid of owing a debt to someone she did not understand, did not know, and could not predict. So Elena began to avoid him. In the mornings, instead of taking the familiar route past the mansion at the end of the street on the way to drop Lily at preschool, she cut through the back alley, even though it added nearly 10 minutes. In the afternoons, she picked Lily up earlier, walked faster, kept her head lower whenever she passed anywhere near Dominic's house. She did not want to see him. She did not want to have to speak. She did not want Lily to run ahead again and call out for the shadow man, as if he were family. Lily noticed the change. Every afternoon she would look out the window, her eyes searching for the familiar shape of the black dog. One day, while Elena was making dinner from what little was left in the cupboards, Lily stood beside her and asked in a small, careful voice, "Mama, why do we not go say hi to the shadow man anymore? Does Shadow miss me?" Elena's hands went still. She looked at her daughter and did not know what to say. She could not explain to a 4-year-old that the adult world was more complicated than bright pictures. She could not tell her child that Mama was afraid of getting involved, afraid of owing someone, afraid of things she could not control. "He is very busy, sweetheart," Elena said, her voice gentle but evasive. "We should not bother him." Lily did not ask again, but her eyes dimmed a little, as if she understood there was something her mother was hiding. The days that followed moved in that quiet avoidance. Elena went to work, came home, cared for her child, and tried to forget the blizzard night, tried to forget the man kneeling to fix the door, tried to forget his eyes when he looked at Lily's drawing. But then strange things began to happen. One morning, Elena woke up and found the heat working again. She called the landlord and asked about repairs, but he said he knew nothing about it, only that someone had come and paid the full cost. Elena did not need to ask who. A few days later, after she worked a night shift at the bar and came home close to 2 a.m, she saw a paper bag set at her doorstep. Inside was a takeout box that was still warm, a bottle of fresh milk, and a small carton of fruit juice meant for a child. No note, no name, but Elena knew. She stood there at her own door at 2 a.m, holding the bag, and she did not know what she was supposed to feel. Grateful, uneasy, angry that he kept stepping into her life even when she had tried to step away. Or something else. Something she refused to name. Then she noticed another thing. Every night when she came home, early or late, the porch light was already on. She never turned that light on before leaving because she wanted to save electricity. She had not asked anyone to do it for her, yet it was always glowing, steady, faithful, as if someone was waiting for her to come home. Elena knew who had done it. She knew who had fixed the heat. She knew who had left food at the door. She knew all of it, but she did not dare to face it. She kept taking the long way around. She kept her head down. She kept pretending nothing was happening. Because Elena had lived too long in a world where nobody gave without wanting something back. She had learned early that kindness always had a price, and that free gifts were often the most expensive of all. She did not have the strength to pay for anything anymore, so she avoided him. And yet, every night, when she saw that warm porch light waiting for her, she found herself wondering if she was avoiding the wrong man, wondering if this time, for the first time in her life, someone was giving and truly asking for nothing in return. But Elena did not dare believe it. She had been hurt too many times to believe in anything anymore. Marco stood in Dominic's office with a stack of invoices and receipts in his hands, his face unable to hide his confusion. He had been with Dominic for more than 10 years. He had watched his boss handle the bloodiest turf wars without blinking. He had seen him order punishment for traitors without a single moment of hesitation. But in recent weeks, Marco had started to wonder if someone had put a spell on his boss. "Boss," Marco said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "Can I ask why we are paying to repair the heating system for a house at number 47, and why I have to send someone to buy food and bring it there every night she comes home late from work? And the porch light." Dominic did not look up from the file in front of him. "Be quiet, Marco." "But boss, you are the boss of all East Brooklyn. You have 100 things to handle. Why do you care about a light bulb and a heating system for some strange woman?" Dominic stopped moving his hand. He lifted his gaze to Marco. His eyes were not angry, not cold. There was only something Marco could not read. "She is not a stranger." Marco wanted to ask more, but Dominic's look cut him off. He lowered his head and left the room. Yet before he closed the door, he muttered, softly enough that only he could hear himself, "Maybe you really have been bewitched by that 4-year-old. Alone in the office, Dominic rose and walked to the window. From here he could see the small street below, the old houses pressed tight together, and number 47 with its patched roof tiles. He knew Elena was avoiding him. He saw her take the long way around each morning. He saw her keep her head down each afternoon. He saw her never once look toward his mansion. He did not blame her. He understood. She was afraid, the way his mother had once been afraid. She did not trust, the way his mother had never dared trust anyone. She was used to facing everything alone, the way his mother had carried everything by herself until the day she finally collapsed from exhaustion. Dominic did not need her gratitude. He did not need her to respond. He only wanted to do what he wished someone had done for his mother, all those years ago. A heating system that worked in a winter that cut through bone. A warm meal after a shift that drained the life out of you. A light left on, waiting, when you came home in the deep of night. Small things, things people take for granted. But for women like Elena, like his mother, they were luxuries they never allowed themselves to dream of. That afternoon, while Dominic was reviewing financial reports, Marco entered the room with a more serious face than usual. "Boss, I saw Miss Vance today." Dominic looked up. She was walking down the street, and an old lady fell near the grocery store. She stopped, helped the woman up, wrapped the scrape on her hand, then sat with her until the woman's family came to pick her up. Marco paused, as if weighing whether he should keep going. She looked like she was in a hurry, probably running late for work, but she stayed. She did not look around to see if anyone was watching. She just helped. Then she left. Dominic said nothing. He sat very still, but in his mind, his mother's face rose clear as if it were yesterday. His mother had been the same, so poor she could not afford milk for her own child, yet she still shared her little meal with a sick neighbor. So exhausted after 12-hour shifts, yet she still stopped to help anyone who needed it, giving when she had nothing, loving even when love was not returned. And in the end, when his mother needed someone, nobody stopped, nobody stayed, nobody helped. Dominic stared out the window, toward number 47. He could not change the past. He could not save his mother, but he could do something for that woman, the one fighting alone the way his mother had once fought, not because he wanted repayment, not because he wanted her to be grateful, but because it was the right thing, because it was what he wished someone had done for his mother. "Marco," Dominic said, his voice low. "Boss, increase the guards near the area around number 47. Quietly. Do not let her know." Marco nodded and did not ask anything more. He understood there were things his boss did not explain, and reasons he did not need to know. Dominic turned his gaze to Lily's drawing on the refrigerator door. The small house. The door shut tight. The warm yellow light. He would protect them, even if she avoided him, even if she never knew. He would stand in the dark and keep watch, the way he wished someone had kept watch for his mother on those long, freezing nights years ago. Everything began with a text message. Elena was clearing tables at the bar where she worked the night shift when her phone buzzed in the pocket of her apron. She thought it was a message from the babysitter about Lily, so she hurried to check it. But it was not. An unfamiliar number. A short line of text. "I know where you are." 4 words. Only 4 words. Yet they were enough to make the blood in Elena's veins turn to ice. She stood frozen in the middle of the noisy bar. Around her, music pounded. People laughed and shouted over one another. Glasses clinked. But she heard none of it. All she could hear was the frantic thudding of her own heart inside her chest. Travis. No one else but Travis would send a message like that. He was out of prison. She did not know when he had been released. No one had told her. No one had warned her. For 4 years she had lived in fear, but also with the fragile hope that when he got out, he would forget her, that he would start a new life, that he would leave her alone. But no, he remembered. He had searched. He was not letting go. With trembling hands, Elena deleted the message, as if erasing it could make the threat disappear. She forced herself to finish her shift. She forced a smile for customers. She forced herself to act as though everything was normal. But when she got home at 2 a.m, she could not sleep. She sat beside Lily's bed, watched her daughter sleeping peacefully, and silent tears slid down her cheeks. The days that followed were a stretch of hell. Every morning, when Elena walked Lily to school, she began to notice a figure standing at the end of the block, a man in a black coat, a knit cap pulled low over his face, leaning against a lamppost and staring in their direction. She could not see his features clearly, but she knew. She felt it. That gaze, that posture, that quiet menace. She could not mistake it. She changed the route she took to work. She changed the time she picked Lily up. She changed every habit she could change. But no matter which way she went, no matter what hour she chose, she still felt watched, as though someone was following, waiting, lurking in the dark. Then, one night, what she feared most finally happened. The clock read 2 a.m. Elena lay in bed with her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, when she heard footsteps outside the door. Not footsteps passing by, footsteps that stopped, right in front of her house. Elena's heart slammed against her ribs like it wanted out. She sat up slowly, trying not to make a sound. Then she heard the doorknob turn. Slowly, testing, someone was trying to open her door. Elena scooped up Lily, still asleep, and carried her into the kitchen corner, the most hidden place in their small home. She sat there with her back against the wall, one hand clamped over her own mouth so no sound could escape, and she waited. The doorknob turned again. And again. The door Dominic had repaired held firm. The new lock was solid, unmoving. At last, the footsteps drifted away, fading into the night. Elena did not move until morning. She sat in that kitchen corner, holding Lily, who slept on without knowing anything, and she cried without a sound. She thought of the card Dominic had left behind, the card she had put in a drawer and never touched again. She thought of calling him, of begging him for help. Then she pushed the thought away. She could not drag someone else into her chaos. She could not owe another debt. She could not let Lily get tangled up in the dangerous world of a Mafia boss, no matter how kind that boss seemed. "I will handle it myself," Elena told herself, the way she had told herself 1,000 times in her life. "I have lived alone for this long. I will keep going." But deep down, she knew this time was different. Travis was not a snowstorm that would pass. Travis was not a broken door that could be repaired. Travis was a nightmare that had returned, and this time, she did not know if she had the strength left to run. Marco stepped into Dominic's office with a face more serious than usual. He did not knock. He did not wait to be invited. That alone meant the news he carried was not ordinary. Dominic looked up from the stack of paperwork, his cold eyes already waiting. "There's a problem, boss." Marco set a thin file on the desk. "My guys report there's a stranger hanging around at the end of the street for the past few days. He's been asking about a brown-haired woman who lives at house number 47. Dominic did not react, but his eyes darkened slightly. "Who is he?" "I had someone dig into it." Marco opened the file. "Travis Dunn, 32 years old, got out of prison 3 weeks ago. Prior record for domestic violence, assault causing serious bodily harm. The victim was Elena Vance." Dominic picked up the file and flipped through the pages. Inside was a photo of Travis, a big man with cold eyes and a brutal look on his face. Beside it were copies of court documents, medical reports detailing Elena's injuries, and photographs of old bruises on her body from years ago. Dominic read each line without speaking. His face stayed calm, but his hand tightened around the folder until the paper crumpled. Marco watched his boss and recognized the anger boiling under that cool surface. He had seen Dominic angry many times, but this was different. This was not a flare-up. This was something deeper, darker, more dangerous. In Dominic's mind, a memory from 25 years ago crashed back like floodwater. A filthy apartment in the South Bronx, banging on the door in the middle of the night. Thugs kicking the door in, demanding protection money his mother did not have. His mother standing in front of him, begging them to spare her son, and then they beat her, right in front of his eyes. He was 11 years old, skinny, weak, only able to stand in the corner and cry. He could not protect his mother. He could do nothing but watch the blood on the floor and hear his mother's moans in the night. No one came to help, not a single person. Dominic set the folder down, his voice low, like thunder before a storm. Has he approached her yet? Not directly, Marco said, but last night, my guy saw him standing in front of the door at house number 47 at 2 in the morning. He tested the doorknob and then walked away. Dominic closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, that look could have frozen hell itself. Put more men on it. 24/7 coverage. Do not let him get near house number 47 one more time. Marco nodded, but he did not leave. Boss, there's one more problem. Vance doesn't seem to know we're protecting her. She might do something stupid, like face him alone. Dominic was silent for a moment. He thought of Elena, the thin woman with sad eyes, the one who had been avoiding him for weeks. She was afraid, but she was proud. She was fragile, but she was stubborn. She would never beg anyone for help, even if death was standing right in front of her, just like his mother. Does she know he's out? Dominic asked. I'm not sure, Marco said, but the way she's changed her schedule, taking the long way, picking up the kid earlier, I think she knows. Dominic stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street sinking into late afternoon light. From here he could see house number 47, the patched roof, the door he had fixed during the snowstorm. She was in there, facing her fear alone, carrying the threat alone. Alone, the way his mother had been alone. This time will be different, Dominic said, his voice steady and certain. This time, someone protects. Marco understood. He lowered his head and left the room, leaving Dominic alone with his thoughts. Dominic stayed at the window, staring at the small house across the street. He did not know whether Elena would accept his help. He did not know whether she would trust him, but it did not matter. He would protect her whether she wanted it or not, because he had once been a helpless child forced to watch his mother suffer, and he would never let that happen again. Not to Elena, not to Lily, not to anyone else under this sky that he could reach. Elena knew she was being watched, not just by Travis, by someone else too. She realized it one evening when she was coming home late from work. A sleek black car, parked at the corner of the street about 50 meters from her house, had been there for 3 straight days. At first, she thought it was Travis's car, and her heart tightened every time she passed it, but then she understood it was not. Travis did not have the money to buy something that luxurious, and Travis did not have the patience to sit in a car for hours without doing anything. Whoever was inside that black car was someone else, and Elena could think of only one person. That night, she could not sleep. She lay in bed with her eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, trying to put the chaos in her mind back into order. Travis was stalking her, and now Dominic's people were watching her too. She was trapped between 2 forces she did not understand, could not control, and did not know which one she should fear more. Anger flared inside her, sudden and violent. She had not asked anyone to protect her. She did not need anyone stepping into her life. She had walked through hell on her own for the past 5 years. She had raised her child on her own. She had picked herself up after every fall, and she did not need a Mafia boss deciding she was weak prey that had to be saved. The next morning, Elena dropped Lily off at the babysitter's earlier than usual. She changed clothes, put on the thickest coat she owned, and stepped outside. It was not fully daylight yet. Fog blanketed the street, but the black car was still there, silent as a ghost. Elena walked straight toward it, her heart pounding out of rhythm, but her steps steady. She stopped beside the driver's door and rapped hard on the glass. The window lowered slowly, and the familiar face of Marco appeared, a flicker of surprise in his eyes before he returned to calm. Miss Vance. Marco gave a small nod, polite. Why are you following me? Elena asked bluntly, without any detours. The boss sent me. Marco answered, just as direct. I do not need anyone protecting me. Tell your boss that. You should speak to him yourself, Marco suggested. I am only following orders. Elena clenched her fist, the anger in her boiling like water at a rolling boil. She turned and moved fast, almost running, toward the mansion at the end of the street. She did not need to think. She did not need to weigh anything. She only needed to face the man who had pushed his way into her life without asking her a single word. The iron gate of the mansion was closed tight, a security camera angled toward her. Elena stood at the gate and slammed her hand against the cold metal bars. Open the gate. I know you are in there. Open it. A few seconds of silence. Then the gate began to open. Slowly. Elena stepped inside, crossed the neatly trimmed garden, and saw Dominic standing at the front door. He wore a black shirt, sleeves rolled up. His face was as cold as ever, but his eyes held no surprise at all, as if he had known she would come. I do not need anyone protecting me, Elena shouted the moment she got close, her voice trembling with anger, and with something else she did not want to admit. I do not need you interfering in my life. I do not want to owe you anything. Dominic did not react. He simply stood there, silent, letting her pour out the storm. Elena breathed hard. Tears began to spill out, no matter how she tried to hold them back. Why? She asked, her voice smaller now, weaker. Why are you doing this? You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Why? Dominic was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady, but with a deep sadness hidden underneath. Do you know who the man watching you is? Elena went still. She had not expected him to know about Travis. Come inside. His note, Dominic said, not like an order, but like an invitation. We need to talk. Elena stepped into the mansion, her heart still hammering in her chest, wild with anger and confusion. She had come prepared with hundreds of things to say, hundreds of questions to demand answers for. But when the door shut behind her, and she stood in that vast, cold living room, every word disappeared. Dominic did not invite her to sit. He did not sit either. They faced each other, only a few steps apart, yet it felt as if an ocean lay between them. Shadow lay motionless in the corner, dark eyes tracking every movement. Travis Dunn. Dominic spoke first, his voice low and calm. 32 years old, released from prison 3 weeks ago. Prior record for domestic violence. The victim was you. Elena felt as if someone had driven a fist into her chest. She did not know Dominic knew that much. She did not know he had looked into her past, into the wounds she believed she had buried deep. He has been watching you for more than a week now, Dominic went on. He knows where you work, where your child goes to school, which roads you take every day. 2 nights ago, he came to your front door at 2 o'clock in the morning. Elena shuddered, not from cold, but from the sudden understanding of how close the danger had been without her even knowing. She had thought she was careful. She had thought she was on guard. But Travis had gotten that close, and she had not even known. Why are you telling me these things? Elena asked, her voice rough. Because you need to know what you are facing, Dominic replied, and because you need to understand why I cannot stand by and do nothing. Elena shook her head, tears starting to spill no matter how hard she tried to hold them back. I do not need anyone to protect me. I have taken care of myself and Lily for 5 years. I do not need. You do not need, or you do not dare. Dominic cut in, gentle, but sharp as a blade. You have been alone for so long you have forgotten that sometimes people can lean on someone else. Elena fell silent. His words slid into her like a needle, straight into a wound she had sworn had healed long ago. She had built a wall around herself for years, letting no one in, trusting no one, relying on no one, because every time she trusted, she was betrayed. Every time she leaned on someone, they left. I am not afraid for myself, Elena said, her voice trembling. I am afraid for Lily. If something happens to me, she will have no one. She will be alone in this world. I cannot. She could not finish. The tears overflowed, and she lifted a hand to cover her face, ashamed to be crying in front of the man she had been shouting at only minutes before. Dominic did not move closer. He did not hold her. He did not offer hollow comfort. He simply stood there, silent, giving her space to cry, to let it pour out. When Elena's sobbing finally softened, Dominic spoke again. I know what it feels like to stand behind a door you cannot lock. Elena looked up at him through the blur of tears. I know what it feels like to lie in the dark and listen to footsteps outside, not knowing if tonight someone will break the door down. Everyone. Dominic continued, his voice low, like a whisper in the night. I know what it feels like to watch my mother being beaten and not be able to do anything. I know what it feels like to be helpless, terrified, and so lonely you want to scream, but no sound comes out." Elena stared at him, and for the first time, she did not see a frightening mafia boss. She saw a wounded child. Like her, like Lily, like millions of others in this world who have stood behind doors that were never strong enough to protect them. "No one came to help my mother," Dominic said, his voice so soft Elena had to strain to hear it. "No one. And I swore to myself that if there ever came a day when I was strong enough, I would never let that happen to anyone else." Silence settled over the room. Elena stood there, tears still falling, but the anger inside her had drained away. In its place was something strange, a connection she had never felt with anyone before. "Now you have me," Dominic said, looking straight into her eyes. "Whether you want it or not, whether you believe it or not, I will not let him lay a hand on you or Lily." Elena did not speak. She only stood there, looking at the man in front of her, and for the first time in so many years, she allowed herself to feel something she had refused for far too long. Hope. That maybe, just maybe, she did not have to be alone anymore. Rumors spread faster than fire. Elena did not know who was the first to see her step into Dominic's mansion that morning, but within just a few days, the whole neighborhood knew. They whispered in the laundromat, they murmured in the grocery store, and prying eyes followed her every time she walked by. "I heard the single mother at number 47 is sleeping with the mafia boss now." And it was now. Oh my God, no wonder she has been looking better off lately. She sure knows how to find herself a place to lean. Poor little girl, growing up in a gangster's house, what is she going to become later on? Elena heard it all. She heard the whispers that were loud enough for her to hear, the snide little laughs when she passed, the looks of contempt disguised as curiosity. She was used to being judged. She was used to being a single mother in a world full of prejudice, but this was different. This hurt more, because it was not aimed only at her. It was aimed at Lily, too. One afternoon, when Elena went to pick Lily up from preschool, the teacher called her over with a serious face. "Miss Vance, I need to talk with you about Lily." Elena's heart tightened. "Is something wrong with her, ma'am?" "Today, some parents have raised concerns." The teacher hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "They are worried about Lily's living environment. They have heard that you are involved with a man who has a bad reputation." Elena felt as if she had been slapped. She tried to stay calm, but her voice still shook when she answered. "I am not involved with anyone. And even if I were, it does not affect Lily's schooling." The teacher nodded, looking sympathetic, but Elena knew the conversation was not over. She knew that from now on, every step she took would be watched, every word she spoke would be judged, and her daughter would carry the consequences of rumors Elena never created. That night, while the two of them ate their modest dinner, Lily suddenly asked, "Mom, are you bad?" Elena almost dropped the spoon in her hand. "What did you say, Lily?" "Today in class," Tommy said. "His mom said your mom is a bad person." Lily looked at her with clear, innocent eyes, not understanding. "Are you bad, Mom? Did you do something wrong?" Elena pulled her daughter into her arms, holding her so tight Lily whimpered. Tears slid down onto Lily's curly hair, but Elena tried not to let her hear the sound of her crying. "I am not bad, sweetheart," Elena whispered, her voice choking. "I am not bad. Never believe what people say about me, all right." Lily nodded, even though she did not truly understand what was happening. She only knew her mother was hurting, and she hugged her mother back as tightly as she could, as if that were the only way she knew how to help. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Elena sat alone in the dark. Her tears were gone, but the pain was still there, untouched. She thought about leaving, finding somewhere else, starting over in a place where no one knew her, no one judged her, no one hurt Lily with baseless rumors. But where could she run? She had no money, she had no family. All she had was this small house, this meager job, and this little girl. And Travis was still out there, waiting. She could run from gossip, but she could not run from him. Elena looked out the window, toward the mansion at the end of the street. The light in Dominic's office was still on. She wondered if she was dragging trouble to his doorstep. She wondered if he regretted helping her. She wondered if she should stay away from him, so neither of them would have to endure the cruel chatter. But then she remembered Dominic's eyes when he spoke about his mother. She remembered the warmth in his low voice when he said, "Now you have me." And she knew that no matter how ruthless the rumors were, no matter how completely the world turned its back on her, there was one person standing in the dark, ready to protect her. The question was whether she had the courage to accept that. Marco walked into Dominic's office with the daily report, but before he could even open his mouth, Dominic spoke. I already know about the rumors. Marco paused. Boss, I was going to. She is being isolated. Dominic cut him off, his tone calm, but with something sharp and cold underneath. The little girl is being bullied at school. The neighbors are talking. She is paying the price because of me. Marco said nothing. He did not know what to say. It was the first time he had ever seen Dominic care about what people thought. The boss of all of East Brooklyn, the man who made an entire city afraid, was worrying about the gossip of nosy neighbors. Gather all our crews. Dominic stood, walked to the window. Electricians, plumbers, carpenters, all of them. Tomorrow morning. Marco raised an eyebrow. What are you going to do, boss? Repairs. It really does on it. The next morning, the whole neighborhood woke up in disbelief. A line of small trucks was parked along the road, loaded down with building materials, tools, ladders, and every kind of equipment you could imagine. More than 20 workers fanned out in every direction, knocking on doors, politely asking if anyone needed anything fixed. Completely free, they said. A community support program. No one knew where the money came from. No one knew who was behind it. But all day long, that small Brooklyn neighborhood looked as if it had been given a new coat of life. Burned-out light bulbs were replaced. Leaking pipes were repaired. Squeaking doors were oiled. Leaky roofs were patched. Rotting steps were reinforced. And Dominic, instead of sitting in his luxurious mansion, went house to house himself. Not as a mafia boss, but like an ordinary neighbor. He wore a plain shirt, sleeves rolled up, and he spoke to each person with a courtesy no one expected. Do you need anything repaired? He asked an elderly woman who lived alone at the end of the street. I noticed your window looks like it is letting air in. The woman watched him with suspicion at first, but when Dominic's workers came and replaced the window frame for her without taking a single cent, she took his hand, her eyes shining with tears. You are not as scary as people say. 2-, she told him. Dominic gave a small smile, the kind of rare smile even Marco hardly ever saw. I am scary, he said, just not to people who are not scary. News of the repair day spread fast through the neighborhood. The people who used to whisper about Dominic began to fall quiet. The people who had looked at Elena with contempt began to think again, not because they feared Dominic, but because they saw something they never expected. The man they called a mafia boss, the man they rumored could kill without blinking, was on his knees fixing the front steps for the widow at the end of the street. He was climbing a ladder to change light bulbs for a blind old man. He was holding a neighbor's baby while the mother ran inside to get water. That afternoon, Dominic had extra streetlights installed at the dark corners of the neighborhood, the places Elena used to fear whenever she walked past at night. He had security cameras installed at strategic points, saying it was to protect the community. No one knew he was paying for it all out of his own pocket. This is money from the Community Safety Fund, Marco said when people asked. There was no such fund. Elena stood at a distance, watching Dominic work all day. She did not know what she was supposed to feel. She had not asked him to do this. She had not wanted him to spend money or effort because of her. But as she watched the neighbor's eyes begin to change, as she heard laughter instead of whispers, as she felt the air of the street grow lighter, she understood what Dominic was doing. He was not answering rumors with words. He was answering with action. He was not proving he was harmless by explaining. He was proving it by giving. That night, when Dominic passed Elena's house on his way home, he stopped for a moment. They looked at each other across a few meters, saying nothing. Elena gave a small nod, a thank you with no voice. Dominic nodded back, then kept walking, shadow padding after him. And from that night on, no one in the neighborhood dared to speak badly about the woman at number 47 anymore. Not because they feared Dominic, because they had seen who he really was, and they understood that anyone the man truly cared about was not a bad person. After the repair day, things slowly began to change. Elena stopped taking the long way around just to avoid the mansion at the end of the street. She began to nod to Dominic when she saw him on the road, a small gesture, but one that marked the thaw between them. Dominic nodded back. No more, no less, as if the two of them were learning how to exist in the same space without needing words. Lily was the first to break the distance. One afternoon, as Elena was walking past the mansion gate with her daughter, shadow slipped out through a crack where the gate stood slightly open, tail wagging hard like it had found an old friend. Lily squealed, let go of her mother's hand, and threw her arms around the dog that was twice her size. Shadow. I missed Shadow so much. Elena started to pull her away, but Dominic appeared at the gate, as if he had been waiting for them. Shadow missed Lily a lot. Barefoot, he said, his tone steady, but softened in a way it usually was not. He keeps looking toward the gate whenever he hears the two of you walking by. Lily looked up, eyes shining. Really? Shadow missed me. Really missed me. Really? Dominic nodded. Would you like to come in and play with him for a little while? Lily turned to her mother, pleading with her eyes. Elena hesitated, but then she looked at her daughter, at that hopeful face, and she could not bring herself to say no. All right, she said, but only for a little while. That afternoon, Lily played with Shadow on the grass in the garden, her clear laughter floating everywhere. Elena sat on the front steps. Dominic sat a few paces away. Not too close, not too far. They watched Lily and Shadow chase each other, and a comfortable silence settled over them. She is a lot like you, Dominic spoke, not looking at Elena. Strong, not afraid. Elena gave a small smile, with something bitter underneath. Lily is not afraid, because she has not lived through enough yet to understand what fear is. I hope she stays that way. Dominic was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I used to be like that too, before I understood how cruel this world can be. Elena turned to look at him, and for the first time, she asked about him instead of letting him ask about her. Your mother, she asked softly. What was she like? Dominic did not answer right away. He watched Lily laughing with Shadow, and in his eyes there was a sadness that ran very deep, very old. She was the strongest woman I have ever known, he said, his voice low. She worked 12 hours a day to raise me. She gave me the last bite of food even when she was hungry. She stayed up by the door every night so I could sleep in peace. Is she still alive? Elena asked gently. No. Dominic shook his head. She died when I was 16. Exhaustion, poverty, illness. I did not make it in time to do anything to save her. Elena did not speak. She understood that kind of pain. She understood the helplessness of not being able to protect the person you love. She understood the guilt of questions that never get answers. I built all of this. Dominic tipped his head slightly toward the mansion behind him, so I would never have to feel that helpless again. But sometimes I wonder, if my mother could see me now, would she be proud, or would she be disappointed? Elena looked at him, and she saw a different Dominic, not the Mafia boss, not the powerful man all of Brooklyn feared, but an orphaned child still reaching for the approval of a mother who was gone. I think she would be proud, Elena said, her voice gentle, not because of what you built, but because you still remember her, because you still care, because you are still the person she raised. Dominic turned to look at her, and for a brief moment, the cold mask slipped away. He did not speak, but his eyes said everything. Thank you, gratitude, and something else, deeper, that neither of them dared to name yet. Mom, Uncle Dominic, Shadow can shake hands. Lily's voice rang out, breaking the moment. They both turned to see the little girl proudly showing off Shadow's trick, and at the same time, they both smiled. Not a social smile, not a polite smile, a real smile. The kind of smile that belongs to people who are slowly learning how to trust each other. That afternoon lasted longer than planned, and when Elena walked Lily home after it had grown dark, she realized something. The distance between her and Dominic had grown smaller, not by much, but enough for her to know that something was changing. In him, in her, and in both of them. The biggest snowstorm in 10 years crashed down on Brooklyn that night. The wind howled like a wild animal. Snow whipped through the air, turning every road white and blind, and the cold pushed through every crack, like invisible fingers trying to choke the city. Then the lights went out. The whole neighborhood sank into complete darkness. Elena was sitting with Lily, reading her a book. When it happened, the light vanished in an instant. All that remained was the shriek of wind outside, and Lily's startled breathing in the black. Mom, I am scared. Lily clung to Elena's arm, her voice trembling. It is all right, sweetheart. Elena tried to soothe her, even though her own heart was pounding hard. It is just a power outage. I will find the flashlight. She felt her way through the darkness and found an old flashlight in a drawer. Its weak beam flickered on, just enough for her to see the fear on her daughter's face. She pulled Lily into her arms, drew the blanket over both of them, and tried to sing a lullaby so Lily would not be so afraid. In the mansion at the end of the street, Marco's phone rang sharply. He answered, and his face went paler with every passing second. Boss. Marco ran into the office, where Dominic sat by candlelight. The camera system for the entire neighborhood is down. Widespread outage. And my men posted at number 47 have gone silent. I cannot reach them. Tonight Instagram. Dominic shot to his feet, every sense in him snapping awake. How long have they been out of contact? 15 minutes. I cannot get through. Dominic did not need to hear anything else. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, the icy wind and snow lashing his face. But he did not slow. "Boss." "In this storm?" Marco shouted after him. "Let me gather the men." "There is no time," Dominic said, and he disappeared into the white night. Shadow tore after him, powerful legs cutting through the deep snow. Inside the house at number 47, Elena had just managed to lull Lily into a restless sleep when she heard footsteps outside. Heavy, slow, coming closer. Her heart nearly stopped. She gently set Lily down on the bed, pulled the blanket up over her, and stood, careful not to make a sound. The flashlight shook in Elena's hand as she aimed it toward the door. Then came the pounding. Not knocking. Pounding. Hard. Violent. "Elena. I know you are in there. Open the door." That voice. The voice Elena had tried to forget for 5 years. The voice that showed up in every nightmare. "Travis. You think you can hide from me?" Travis roared from outside, the pounding growing heavier. "You think you can take my kid, and I would not find you?" Elena backed up until her spine hit the wall, her whole body shaking. She looked toward Lily. The child had woken from the noise, eyes wide with fear. "Mom, Dace, someone is there?" Lily asked, her voice on the edge of tears. Elena did not answer. She ran to her, scooped Lily up, and rushed into the corner of the kitchen, the most hidden place in the house. "Sit here. Do not come out. No matter what happens, do not come out. Do you hear me?" Elena's voice trembled, but she tried to hold it steady. Lily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. The pounding got worse. Once, twice. The third time, the door shuddered violently. The new lock Dominic had installed was holding, but Elena knew it could not hold forever. "Open the door," Travis screamed, frantic. "Open it, or I will break it down." Then he started kicking. Each kick hit like a sledgehammer. Wood began to crack. The hinges began to loosen. Elena clutched Lily tight, tears spilling down her face, but she bit her lip and did not dare let a sound escape. She thought about calling the police, but the phone had no signal in the storm. She thought about running out the back, but Travis might have someone waiting there. She had no choices left. One final kick. The door burst open, and Travis filled the doorway, a metal bar in his hand, eyes bloodshot from liquor and rage. "Found you." Travis stepped into the house, the metal bar in his hand swinging with open threat. His eyes swept through the pitch-dark rooms, hunting for his prey. "Come out, Elena. I know you are here. Stop hiding. It's C." Elena pressed herself deeper into the kitchen corner, one hand covering Lily's mouth so the little girl would not make a sound. Her heart hammered like it was trying to break free. The blood in her body felt like it had turned to ice. She could hear Travis's heavy footsteps drawing closer. She could hear the metal bar tapping the wall, beat by beat, like a countdown to hell. "Where is my kid?" Travis roared. "Where is my kid? Where are you hiding her?" "It's no." He began knocking things over, throwing chairs, kicking the table. The sound of breaking and crashing filled the house, and each sharp noise stabbed Elena straight through. She knew she had only seconds left before he found them. She knew she had to do something, but her body would not obey. Her arms and legs were numb with fear, frozen in place. "You think you can take my kid from me?" Travis shouted, venom thick in his voice. "She is my blood. You have no right." End quote. He stepped into the kitchen, his crazed gaze sweeping the room, then stopping at the corner where Elena crouched with Lily in her arms. A cruel smile spread across Travis's mouth. "Found you." He lifted the metal bar. Elena shut her eyes, curled her body over Lily, shielding her with her own, waiting for the blow. But it did not come. Instead, the back door burst open, and a black shape lunged in like a storm. Shadow. The Rottweiler launched himself at Travis, sharp teeth clamping down hard on the arm that held the bar. Travis screamed in pain. The metal bar clattered to the floor. He went down, trying to shove the dog away, but Shadow did not let go. A savage growl rolled through the darkness. Then Dominic stepped in. He stood in the back doorway, his coat covered in snow, his face cold as ice, but his eyes burning with a fury Elena had never seen in him before. It was not the kind of anger that explodes. It was something far more frightening. Anger held in perfect control. Precise. Deadly. Shadow. Release. Dominic commanded, his voice low and cold. The dog immediately let go of Travis's arm and stepped back to Dominic's side, still growling, still warning. Travis struggled upright, clutching his bleeding arm, staring at Dominic with anger and confusion. "Who the hell are you? This is family business. Stay out of it. Today, Dominic did not answer right away. He walked toward Travis, slow and steady, each footstep even, like a war drum. Travis backed up until his spine hit the wall. Nowhere left to run. "I asked you who you are," Travis yelled, trying to sound strong, but his voice was already shaking. Dominic stopped one step away and looked straight into Travis's eyes. When he spoke, his voice was as low as thunder before a storm, as cold as winter ice. "I am the man who will make you disappear. Everyone. Forever." Travis went pale. He had heard enough about Dominic Rossi to know this man was not joking. He opened his mouth to say something, but in that moment, Marco and Dominic's men rushed in through the front door, moving fast, taking Travis down, pinning him to the floor. Dominic did not spare Travis even one more second of attention. He turned toward the kitchen corner, where Elena was still holding Lily, both of them shaking. He walked over and slowly crouched down to their level. "It is over," he said, so gentle Elena almost could not believe it was the same man who had just threatened Travis. "He cannot hurt you or Lily anymore." Lily, her face soaked with tears, slipped out of her mother's arms and looked at Dominic. "Uncle Dominic, I am so scared." Dominic hesitated for a brief moment. Then he gently set his hand on Lily's head and smoothed her tangled hair. "Shadow is sorry he scared you. He only wanted to protect you." "Asser." Lily looked at Shadow standing nearby, his tail already giving a small wag again, and she managed a smile through her tears. "Shadow is brave. Shadow is a hero." Dominic smiled, a rare smile, one even Marco had never seen. "Yes, Shadow is a hero." Then he stood and turned to Elena. She was still sitting there, trembling, tears streaming down her face, but no longer from fear. She looked at him, and in her eyes he saw something he had been searching for many years. "Trust." "Thank you," Elena whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you." Dominic did not speak. He only nodded, then turned away to direct his men as they dragged Travis outside. The police would come soon. Travis would be arrested for violating the no-contact order. And this time, he would not be released early. But that was for later. Right now, the only thing that mattered was that Elena and Lily were safe, and Dominic would make sure they stayed safe forever. The police came and went. Travis was handcuffed and loaded into the car on charges of violating the no-contact order and breaking into a home. This time, he would not slip out with a light sentence. This time, he would be in prison for a long time. But Elena did not feel relief. She stood in the middle of her wrecked house, looking at the broken pieces scattered at her feet, and she felt as shattered as the place around her. Dominic offered to take her and Lily back to the mansion for a few days while the house was repaired. Elena did not have the strength to refuse. She carried Lily, followed him down the street buried under white snow, and stepped into the warm mansion she once believed she would never dare enter. Lily fell asleep the moment her body touched the sofa, exhausted from fear and crying. Shadow curled up beside her like a loyal guardian, his dark eyes opening now and then to scan the room before closing again, satisfied. Elena sat in the chair across from them, watching her daughter sleep, and tears began to fall. Not from fear, not from pain, from something she could not name. Maybe it was relief, maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was all the feelings she had held back for so many years, finally finding a way out. Dominic did not sit beside her. He stood in the kitchen, made a cup of hot tea, then set it down gently on the table in front of Elena. "Drink. It will warm you." Elena lifted the cup, but she did not drink. She only held it, letting the heat seep into her numb fingers. For a long time, neither of them spoke. There was only the sound of fire in the hearth, Lily's steady breathing, and the storm wind outside, quieter now. Then Elena spoke, her voice rough from crying and from exhaustion. "I am not crying because of tonight." Dominic looked at her, silent, waiting. "I am crying because of what it means." Elena went on, her eyes fixed on the tea in her hands. "For 5 years, I have told myself I had to be strong, that I did not need anyone, that I could take care of myself and Lily, that if I stopped being strong, even for 1 second, everything would fall apart." She lifted her gaze to him, her eyes red, but clear all the way through. "I am scared, Dominic. I am scared that if I stop being strong, everyone will leave. I have been abandoned too many times. My family left me. Travis left me in the cruelest way. Every person I ever trusted walked away." Her voice caught, tears spilling over. "I do not know how to trust anyone anymore. I do not know how to lean on someone without being afraid they will disappear." Dominic remained there, quiet. He did not rush to comfort her. He did not offer empty words. He gave her space to cry, to let it out, to finally be herself, without pretending to be unbreakable. When Elena's sobbing eased, he stepped closer, sat in the chair across from her, and looked at her with eyes Elena had never seen in anyone before. Not pity, not judgment, only understanding. "I am not here because you are weak," Dominic said, his voice low, each word clear. "I am here because you have been strong alone for too long. Trust her." Elena looked at him, tears still sliding down her cheeks, but her breathing steadier now. "You do not have to carry it alone anymore," he continued. "Not because you are weak, but because sometimes even the strongest people need someone standing beside them." He did not touch her. He did not hold her. He only offered his hand, palm up, an invitation with no force behind it. Elena stared at that hand for a long time. A rough hand, marked by a few scars. The hand of someone who had endured suffering, the way she had. Then, slowly, she placed her hand on his, not gripping, just a light touch. But that connection was stronger than any embrace. They sat there in the glow of the fire, silent, but no longer alone. Outside, the storm had passed. Inside, another wall had fallen. The wall Elena had built around her heart for so many years. A wall meant to keep her safe from being hurt. A wall that kept her from believing in anyone. Tonight, it had come down. And Elena, for the first time in a long time, did not feel afraid of that. In the days after the storm night, Dominic did not only repair the house at number 47, he rebuilt it from the ground up. A new door was installed, solid and strong, more secure than any door on the block. A smart lock system, security cameras, a new heating system, insulated windows. Everything was replaced with the best things money could buy. Elena stood there watching the workers, not knowing whether she should thank him or argue with him. "You do not need to do all of this," she said to Dominic when he came to check the progress. "I know," he answered, not looking at her, his eyes still following the work. "I want to." Elena did not say anything else. She had learned Dominic was not a man of many words, and when he decided something, no one could change it. While the house was being repaired, she and Lily kept staying at the mansion, and in those days, something strange began to happen. The cold mansion slowly started to feel warmer. Lily's laughter rang through the rooms. Her tiny footsteps ran down the halls. Shadow barked with joy as he chased her in play. And Elena's voice, soft and steady, sometimes a lullaby, sometimes simple talk with Lily, slipped into every shadowed corner of the house. Dominic was not used to those sounds. He had lived alone for too long, in silence and perfect order. But strangely, he did not feel disturbed. He found himself waiting for Lily's laughter every morning. He found himself listening to Elena talking with her daughter in the kitchen. He found himself no longer wanting to return to an empty house. One evening, while Elena was preparing dinner in the kitchen, Lily ran into Dominic's office where he was reading papers. "Uncle Dominic, will you eat dinner with me and Mom?" "Everyone." Dominic looked up, seeing the little girl standing in front of him with bright eyes and a wide grin. He did not know how to answer. He could not remember the last time he had eaten with anyone. "I am busy," he said, but his voice did not sound certain. "I will eat later." But Mom cooked a lot. Lily would not give up. "Mom says nobody should eat alone. Eating alone is really sad." "I understand." Dominic looked at the child, then toward the kitchen, where Elena was stirring vegetables at the stove, her back to him, and he did not know what pushed him, but he stood and followed Lily to the table. Dinner was simple, not the elaborate dishes he was used to being served. Just white rice, stir-fried vegetables, and a little braised pork. But Dominic realized it was the best meal he had had in many years. Not because of the taste, because he was not eating alone. Lily sat in the middle, talking nonstop about Shadow, about what she had drawn today, about a butterfly she had seen in the garden. Elena reminded her to eat now and then, her eyes occasionally drifting to Dominic with a small smile. And Dominic, for the first time in a long time, felt like he belonged somewhere. "Mom, can Uncle Dominic stay and eat dinner with us forever?" Lily asked, innocent. Elena nearly choked. She looked at Dominic, not knowing what to say, but Dominic answered, calm, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "If your mother allows it, I will." Lily squealed with delight, not understanding the deeper meaning of his words. But Elena understood, and when her eyes met Dominic's across the table, she saw a question there, a promise, a beginning. She did not nod. She did not say anything. She only smiled, a small smile, but a true one. And that was all Dominic needed. From that night on, dinner became a habit. 3 people around the table, Shadow lying at Lily's feet. And the mansion was no longer a cold place. It was slowly becoming something Dominic once believed he would never have: a home. A year had passed since the first night of the snowstorm, a year of dinners together, afternoons with Lily and Shadow in the garden, nights when Elena no longer had to lie awake guarding the door. The house at number 47 had been fully restored, but mother and daughter still went often to the mansion at the end of the street, and Dominic still stopped by their place often, as if the line between the two houses no longer existed. Elena returned to the interior design passion she had set aside years ago. She began taking small jobs, decorating cafes in the area, redesigning the flower shop owned by the woman at the end of the street. With every finished project, her confidence grew a little more, and her smile showed up more and more. She did not know that many of those customers came through Dominic's quiet introductions. He never told her, and she never asked. Some things did not need to be spoken to be understood. Lily had grown older, livelier, and she began calling Dominic by a new name. "Daddy Dom," she shouted, running toward him when he walked in one afternoon. "Daddy Dom, I drew a butterfly. It is so pretty. Daddy Dom, look." Dominic froze where he stood. He looked at the little girl holding up her drawing with that bright, radiant smile, and he did not know how to react. It was the first time anyone had ever called him that. It was the first time he had ever been called a father. Marco stood behind him, watching it all. And for the first time in his life, he saw his boss tremble, not from fear, not from anger, from something else, something Marco could not name. Dominic slowly knelt to Lily's level, took the drawing, and stared at it for a long time. The butterfly was scribbled, the colors were smeared, the wings were uneven, but it was the most beautiful picture he had ever seen. "It is beautiful," he said, his voice a little rough. "Daddy Dom really likes it." Lily beamed, threw her arms around his neck, and Dominic went still for a moment before he slowly wrapped his arms around her. He looked up and saw Elena standing in the kitchen doorway, eyes shining with tears, but her mouth smiling. That morning, 1 year after the first storm night, Dominic came to Elena's door with a brown envelope in his hand. He did not call ahead. He did not warn her. He only stood there and waited until Elena opened the door. "Something wrong, coming this early?" Elena asked, surprised. "There is something I want to give you." Dominic answered, his voice steady, but something different lived in his eyes. Elena took the envelope, opened it, and her heart nearly stopped. Inside were the house transfer papers, the house at number 47. Owner name, Elena Vance and Lily Vance. Dominic Rossi's name was nowhere on them. "You bought this house?" Elena asked, her voice shaking, not believing her own eyes. 3 months ago." Dominic nodded. "But I am not keeping it. This is your house and Lily's. Forever. No one can take it away." Elena stared at the papers, then at Dominic, unable to speak. She had lost everything once. She had had nothing but her daughter and a constant, hungry fear. And now the man in front of her was placing into her hands something she had never dared to dream of, a real home, a place that belonged to her. "Why?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why did you not put your name on it? Why are you giving it all to us?" End quote. Dominic was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, gentle but certain. "Because no matter what happens between us, no matter what the future looks like, you still need a place to go back to. You and Lily need to know there is a place that belongs to you, not tied to anyone, not tied to me. That is something my mother never had." Elena's tears spilled over. She was not crying because of the house. She was crying because of what it meant. Because for the first time in her life, someone was giving without demanding anything in return. Because for the first time, someone understood what she needed before she could even say it. "Mom, what is wrong?" Lily ran out, panicked when she saw her mother crying. Dominic lifted the little girl into his arms and looked into her wide, worried eyes. "Mom is crying because she is happy, sweetheart. From now on, this is your house. Forever. It is your house. Do that." Lily did not fully understand, but she still asked, "Then what about Daddy Dom's house?" Dominic looked at Elena. His eyes softened, and he said, his voice light as breath, "Daddy Dom's house is wherever you two are." Another year passed. Winter returned to Brooklyn, bringing sharp winds and white snow that covered every road. But the house at number 47 was nothing like it used to be. It was no longer the worn-down place with a trembling door and a broken heating system. Now it was a true home. Lily's drawings hung on the walls. Family photos sat on the shelves, and laughter lived in every room. Elena stood in the kitchen, preparing dinner, the smell of good food drifting through the house. Dominic sat on the living room sofa, reading, lifting his eyes now and then to watch Lily play with Shadow on the rug. It was the most ordinary scene. And it was also the scene all three of them once believed they would never have. Outside, the snowstorm began to build again. Wind hissed through the smallest cracks. Snow struck the windows like it wanted to remind them of the bitter winter nights from years ago. And then, suddenly, a loud crash shook the air. The front door flew open from a sudden hard gust. Cold wind and snow rushed inside, making the fire in the hearth flicker and sway. Lily jumped up, her eyes bright with excitement instead of fear the way they used to be in earlier years. "Daddy Dom, the door is broken again," she squealed, running toward the door as it swung. Dominic set his book down, stood, and walked to the doorway. He did not look annoyed. He did not sigh. He only looked at the door with a small smile on his lips. Elena came out of the kitchen and stood beside him, and together they stared into the white blur outside. Lily ran over and stood between them, her tiny hand holding her mother's hand and Daddy Dom's hand. "Let's fix it," she said, excited. Dominic looked down at her, then at Elena, and he said, his voice warmer than Elena had ever heard it, "Then we fix it. Together." The three of them stepped to the door. Dominic placed his hand on the wooden frame. Elena placed her hand beside his. And Lily, even though her little hand could not help much, placed hers lower down. They pushed together, and the door slowly closed, softly, with that familiar click. Outside, the storm still howled. Inside, the house stayed warm and calm. Elena stood there watching the door now firmly shut, and memories rushed back. She remembered nights when she had been alone, wedging a chair under the doorknob, too afraid to sleep. She remembered wind cutting through gaps, cold as a blade. She remembered loneliness that seemed endless, fear that never left, and long sleepless nights holding Lily in the corner. But now everything was different. She had a strong door. She had a real home. She had a family. She was not alone anymore. Elena turned to look at Dominic, the man who had once been the fear of all Brooklyn, the man she had once tried to avoid, the man who had stepped into her life on a snowstorm night and never left. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Dominic looked at her, his eyes no longer cold the way they had been in the beginning, but warm, gentle, full of things that did not need to be spoken. "I am the one who should thank you," he replied, "for giving me a reason to become a better man." Lily looked up at the two adults, not understanding what they were saying, but she could feel the warmth in the air. She smiled, the clear smile of a child who is loved and protected. "Daddy Dom, Mom, let's eat. I am hungry." All three of them laughed, and they walked into the kitchen, leaving the door closed tight behind them. The door where everything began. The door where a 4-year-old girl had asked a stranger, "Can you fix our door? My mother is so scared." And the man had fixed it. Not only the door, but the whole life of that mother and child. Sometimes in life, we build walls around our hearts to protect ourselves. We learn not to trust anyone, not to lean on anyone, not to open up to anyone. We think being alone is safer, that expecting nothing means we will never be disappointed. But this story reminds us that sometimes the bravest thing is not carrying everything by yourself. The bravest thing is allowing someone to step in, allowing yourself to be loved, and allowing your heart to heal. Not everyone is Travis. Not everyone will hurt you. Sometimes, even the people who seem the scariest are carrying a heart that is waiting for someone to reach it. If this story touched your heart, please press the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next moving stories. A like and a share from you will help give us more motivation to bring more meaningful videos every day. We would truly love to know how you feel about this story. Have you ever met someone like Elena? Someone who has been strong alone for far too long? Or have you ever been someone like Dominic, quietly protecting someone without needing them to know? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every comment, and we value every story you share. We wish all of you watching this video good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and